Because of his overweight, his life had turned upside down. Because of not taking a shower for a long time, his colleagues were all teasing him. They dragged him to the restroom. While working, his colleagues were all bad-mouthing him. They even snatched his headphone. Fusey didn't want to argue with his colleague, so he just left without saying anything. The colleague threw the headphone at him. Fusey still kept calm, picking up his headphone and leaving. When his boss called for him, asking if he was being bullied, Fusey only said that it was just the way they communicated with each other. In fact, it wasn't the first time he got bullied at work. Fusey was 40 years old. Because of his appearance and his introversion, he hadn't been dating anyone till now. He even lived with his mother. Every day, Fusey had the same breakfast. Every Friday, he went to the same restaurant, ate at the same table, ordered the same meal. He listened to heavy metal music, loved building crafts, took interests in recreating battlefields on the tabletop. He was skilled in what he did after all. His only friend was the childhood friend, Moror. He was already a father of 2 children. One day, after work, Fusey came to a toy store to buy a piece he had taken a liking on. On the way home, he met Hira. Hira asked him, "You bought it for your son?" Fusey shook his head. "Then is it for your nephew?" Fusey shook his head again. He couldn't tell her he bought it for himself. That day, Hira forgot to bring the key with her. Fusey invited her in while she was waiting. He brought her cookies. They were getting along very well. After a while, Hira's father came to take her home. After seeing Fusey's appearance, Hira's father seemed to beware of him. He tossed him a few glances. Hira was told of before she was taken home. Even a thank he couldn't be bothered to tell him. Rolf, his mother's boyfriend, teased him for being home all day. He had signed him up for a dance class, hoping he could extend his relations. Fusey's mother helped him prepare for the class. In the class, people were all laughing and chatting. No one seemed to notice Fusey's existence. He couldn't help but feel like an outcast, leaving with self-pity. Getting in the car, he listened to music, waiting for the class to end. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but feel bad for him. Isn't that our wish to fit it with the world, but at the same time fear of being alone? Because of his weight, he got bullied. Fusey also knew how to repair cars. That day, his former bullying colleague asked him for help with his car. Fusey didn't refuse him, quickly getting into it. While he was repairing, the colleague apologized to him. In fact, Fusey didn't mind him. Perhaps he had been bullied from childhood, now he finally came to terms with it. He supposed it was none of a matter. The colleague invited him to the party that Saturday. Fusey agreed with him. On Saturday, the colleague hooked him up with a stripper, hoping he could finally become a man that night. Fusey strongly protested. Some of his colleagues grounded him. Fusey was scared. He could only push the colleague away, then left the party. Fusey sat in his car as usual, pretending that he had just arrived. Suddenly, it was raining outside. A woman appeared. Noticing Fusey's car, she approached him, asking him for a lift. This was the first time Fusey felt something pulling on his heartstring. In the car, Seon constantly talked to him, asking him if he was a pervert. Fusey didn't reply to it. Seon believed he wasn't a bad guy. She changed the subject. Fusey told her he was taking the dance class there. She enthusiastically told him to take the class next week. She would teach him how to dance as a way to thank him for his generosity today. Thought Fusey didn't make clear his answer. In the second lesson of the dance class, he attended. Though Fusey's moves were clumsy and unprofessional, under Seon's instruction, he started to catch up with other attendants. During the class, his eyes had never got off of Seon. After the class, Seon asked him out for dinner. Fusey walked her to his favorite restaurant, which he always came to every Friday. The restaurant owner had only seen him here alone, sitting at the same table and eating the same meal, so he was stunned, then even gave them free desserts. While working, he also kept glancing at them. After the meal, Fusey brought Seon home. Seon invited him in for a tea, but Fusey turned her down. Seon insisted he spent a coffee with her, but Fusey declined. "I am not thirsty." Seon couldn't believe that. She said nothing and got off the car. "I could only say it was him who was responsible for his single state." Fusey sat alone. He felt something urging within himself. He turned his car, knocking on Seon's door and telling her if she had milk available, he could spend a talk. Hearing that, Seon immediately invited him in. Fusey knew that Seon was working at a flower shop and she liked traveling, having a dream of her own flower shop. To give her a surprise, Fusey also went to the travel agency, bought the tickets to Egypt and found Seon. But when he came to the flower shop, Seon wasn't there yet. Waiting for her in the car, he saw Seon got of the garbage truck. Turned out, she was a garbage worker. Being exposed, Seon turned her bad attitude, shutting Fusey down. But Fusey kept ringing her doorbell, telling her he didn't care if she was a garbage worker. Nothing mattered than herself. He gave her the tickets he bought for them, but Seon declined. She told him they were just friends. All his efforts went to waste. He was an over 200-pound weighted man. His colleagues took off his headphone, but he didn't resist. He just walked away silently when the headphone was smashed. After all, he didn't hate his colleague, even helping him repair his car. The little girl next door looked for him. He took her to the ice cream shop and took her to the seaside. But when they got home, the girl's dad had called the police and waited for them to return. He accused him of being a pervert. Fusey was taken to the police station. After the inquiry and investigation of the police officer, Fusey was found innocent. He was released after all. For a while, Fusey hadn't seen Seon at the dance class. When he came to her home, he found that her home turned into a mess. The television was still on. The cat meowed hungrily. It turned out that Seon had depression. She didn't want to get out of the closet. Fusey didn't turn his back to her. He took the initiative to help her to manage the house, cooked her breakfast. Finally, he came to the place where Seon worked. Next thing, he took over Seon's assignment, keeping her job still. He came to cook and take care of Seon in his free time. Seon was getting better. Their relationship had taken a further step. Fusey helped her enjoy a meaningful life. Seon helped him to open himself. The two redeemed each other. Seon wanted to move them together. Fusey agreed. He packed his craft for the little girl next door. The father took it. He even apologized to Fusey for misjudging him before. It was from the bottom of his heart. Everyone had their own misfortune, but Fusey always treated people who had hurt him with kindness. But when Fusey moved all his belongings to Seon's home, she was back to regret. She said she wasn't ready. Fusey would still be in place. He still held on to her. She was tolerant of her own decision. Fusey took all his belongings back. His life came back to square one. Fusey bought a grocery store with his savings and transformed it into a flower shop. Because he remembered Seon once dreamed of having her own flower shop. He wrote a letter to wrap the flower shop key in it. And went to Seon's home. After all this, he left silently. This man really knew how to love people, but he never asked for the same treatment from anyone. Fusey took the trip to Egypt. There should have been a two-person trip to Egypt. His life seemed to have not changed anything, but it actually changed somehow. Still being alone, but now a smile bloomed on his face. I don't know why the appearance of someone decides how they are treated. Appearance isn't what we use to assume someone. Someone's not good looking couldn't give us a reason to mistreat them. It isn't only unfair, but also ruthless. Though Fusey is bullied because of his look, his heart is big enough to forgive them all. A well-nourished soul is what makes a person shine. I'm Harry. If you like the video, please like and share.